Who Likes Hot Chocolate? Written by Karen Muckler, illustrated by Jacqueline Davis. Focus question: what lesson did Mike learn about how to have a successful business? Mike McCarthy hopped from food to food, trying to keep warm. A car drove by on occasion, but nobody stopped. When the mail carrier approached, Mike perked up. She'd bought a cup of lemonade last summer, but when his hopeful eyes met hers, she shook her head regretfully. Sorry, she said. I'm still trying to drop the 5 pounds I put on at Christmas. She handed him the mail, wished him luck, hopped back in her truck, and sped away. Mike glanced down at the advertising flyer the postal carrier had just handed him and its announcement, "Lemons in season." He shook his fist in the bright and beautiful searchers. "Curse you, lemons," he said. Then he laughed bitterly and wiped at his runny nose. The lemons in the ad was less than half the price they'd been when he had run his lemonade stand the previous summer. The cost of lemons then had driven his business into the ground. Mike had tried to learn a lesson from the money-making failure and every failure that followed. But the truly terrible thing was that lemons were in season now, in February. What kind of lesson was that? In February, people wanted something warm to drink, so that Saturday morning, Mike had been out of the crop since 9 to sell it to them. His eye-catching sign advertised creamy hot chocolate, with a drawing of marshmallow melting into a small sea of warm cocoa. He had a full thermos, paper cups with handles, even whipped cream in a can for demanding customers. He'd covered so many considerations this time around, so where was everybody? Sure, it was only 17 degrees colder with the wind chill, but the sun was shining, sort of. By 10, Mike considered drinking some of his product to warm up but stopped himself. That will eat straight into your profit margin, McCarthy. Esther came out at 10:30, waving $1. "1 cup of your finest hot chocolate, please." When his mom came out at 11, that remained his only sale, and the chill had settled into his bones. "Honey," she said, "come on inside." Mike tried to set his jaw, unsuccessfully, because his teeth were chattering. So instead, he turned his face defiantly into the wind, and when he sneezed, the sneeze blew back across his face. "Gross," Mike muttered. That was the last straw. Mike let his mom let him inside and run him a hot bath. He soaked in it for half an hour, then climbed into bed. Pickles curled up beside him and promptly fell asleep. Mike started at the ceiling. His parents crept in and sank onto the end of his bed. "What's the matter, Mike?" "The matter," Mike intoned heavily, "is that I'm a failure." "You're not a failure," Mr. McCarthy cried. Mr. McCarthy scratched his head. "We have been waiting to talk to you about your mania for money, though." Esther wandered in. "What is this, Grand Central Station?" Mike cried. Mr. McCarthy started again. "You were trying to buy the spigot. Then you bought the spigot. When you turned around and sold your coat. Why?" Mike stared at the ceiling and said nothing. What could he say? "You didn't need the money for something else?" "You didn't need the money for something else?" His mom prompted. "Derek isn't trying to sell you whatever he got for Christmas," Hida suggested. "You're not being bullied?" his mom asked. "Threatened in any way?" Slowly, miserably, Mike met their eyes, and then just as slowly shook his head. "It's not the money," he said. "I don't really care about the money." His parents stared at one another in surprise. Their worried expressions made him feel awful. "What happened was, I got the fever." "The fever?" Hida repeated cautiously. Mike nodded slowly. "I was like those gamblers in Las Vegas." "But isn't that those guys care about?" his mom asked. "The money." Yes, said Mike slowly, but more than that, I think they care about winning. It feels too good to win, you know. Otherwise, why keep gambling when you have already won big? You trust the money and walk away. So you're a gambler, Mrs. McCarthy said doubtfully. No, objected Astar. No, agreed Mike. He groaned and shook his head, but Astar smiled at him encouragingly. Soon Mike went on. I mean, I have done some bad things, or nearly did them anyway. I saw that awesome coat. I was gonna sell my teeth. I almost stole from starving kids in Botswana or Uruguay or somewhere hungry. I haggled with the tooth fairy. Who haggles with the tooth fairy? I mean, what a jerk. It seemed like I was willing to do anything to make a quick buck, and each time, part of me was like, why are you doing these things? What is it that you want? I mean, yes, I wanted the spy kit. I wanted to win. I wanted the money, but my vote waved. But now the lemons are in season. My voice broke. I'm like that guy who keeps pushing the rock up the hill and it keeps rolling back down over his face. He turned and gave his pillow a discouraged punch, then sat up and propped his behind his back. It's depressing, he said, but he sounded less depressed. I mean, sure, if nobody handed me $1 million, that would be fantastic. But how much more fantastic to make it?